Hey there, so today it's Tuesday and we're doing our Tuesday Feng Shui stories. Today I want to tell you the story of one time when my kids, my boys, pitched me on something I didn't want to allow that they very much wanted to. And so in our house, we do not believe in exposing kids to video games too early. When they were little, they didn't have any video games at home. Of course, if they went to a party or if they went on a play date and their friends had video games, we would let them play the games. When they went with me to the gym and they had the video games, the Wii video games where they would work out as they played a video game, so they could do that. So they were able to play video games, but not at home. And when they asked me, why can't we have video games at home? I told them, well, because I don't want to shoot myself in the foot. And I told them, when the older one, Awan, when Awan is 15 years old and he has gotten his driving permit, you guys can use your own money to buy video games because I'm not going to spend any money in getting something that's going to make my life miserable. And so you guys can do that when Awan is 15 and Zafar is 12. And that was the deal. So 2 years early, right, instead of being 15 and 12, they were actually 13 and 10. They came to me, I was working and they said, Mama, do you have a few minutes for us? And I said, okay. And I gave them my full attention. And then they told me, well, you know how you told us that we couldn't have video games until we are 12 and 15? And I said, yes. And they said, well, my brother and I, they kept taking turns, speaking. And they said, well, my brother and I, we have saved our money for the past year and a half, all the money that was given to us for Christmas and birthdays. And we have several $100 saved. So we were looking online and we were looking at these Lego sets we want to get. And we figured we probably could get 5 or 7 sets of Legos, and each of those has 500 to 1,000 pieces. So we want you to visualize this, Mama, all of these Lego sets spread around the house. And, or we could get a gaming console that is about this big, this wide, this deep, and this tall. And that's all the space it would occupy. See, they knew their audience, right? They knew who we're talking to, because it's very important to me that the home be tidy. And then they said, and then we would get 3 games and they would occupy about this much space in a bookcase, and that would be it. And we leave it up to you, Mama. And so my first thought after they said that was, okay, they've been watching too much Shark Tank, right? And then my second thought was, well, it was a good pitch. They knew their audience. They presented it really well. And I thought that they deserved to be rewarded for that effort. So we did allow video games after that, but we did not let them do it, how do you say it? We didn't give them free rein with video games. We set some very clear rules of how many days a week they could watch video games and for how long they could watch video games. And even after that, there was a little bit of struggle, even after we had set these rules, because they would try to get away with things. There's an addictive component to video games. Video games are designed to be addictive. And so there were issues with that, we had to address those at different times. And one of the things that we started doing is that when they go to sleep, they put their devices, including all remote controls, in a cabinet that has a lock and key, and then that key goes in my bedroom. And so the reason I'm sharing this story with you is because of Legos. That's the reason I want to tell you this story. So when the children were smaller, right before they got into Legos, it wasn't too hard to pick up their toys and their belongings to tidy up the house. So my husband and I would do it. We would let the kids help a little so they would develop good habits. But it wasn't a big deal. But that all changed when they got into Legos. And you get every set of Legos has hundreds of pieces, sometimes over 1,000 pieces, right? And it's very different picking up, for example, train tracks or Hot Wheel cars from the floor than picking up these tiny little pieces and they hurt so much if you step on them barefoot, right? And so when my boys were about 5 and 8 years old, that's when they got into Legos. And I realized it was so easy, for especially for the little one. I would spend a lot of time picking up their Legos and putting them in bins, like plastic bins, with lids and stuff. But it was too easy for him to reach the bins and then just take the lid off and just dump everything back on the floor. So what I learned from my experience of trying to keep a house tidy with two boys is, first, don't use plastic. Those plastic containers, they seem so convenient at the store, but they're ugly, they don't smell good, and they're too easy for kids to knock down. So that's one of the lessons I learned. The other thing that I learned is that you do have to teach kids how to pick up the rooms. As parents, many times we make the mistake of telling kids to do something that we actually have not taken care to show them how to do it. And that is a problem. And so when they were 5 and 8, I realized, okay, they need to start working, pitching in. They need to be able to keep their bedrooms clean and tidy and organized. And it was going to be better for them. It was going to be better for their mind too, and for their emotional health, to have things organized and to be able to find things. And so here I have two boys, right? And I started experimenting and coming up with processes, trying to reverse engineer how I organize my home. So as an adult, I'm a very organized person. But if you had gone into my bedroom when I was a child, I like chaos. To tell you the truth, I like chaos, right? And my parents had help, and so I would generate chaos, and the next time I went in my room, the chaos had been picked up. But as an adult, with no help, I started seeing more the importance of not living in the middle of chaos, but being organized. When I was younger, my mind was so powerful, I guess is the word, and I had a really, really good memory. And like when I was going through the School of Architecture, I remember where I had dropped things, and I was able to find things even though everything was in chaos. When I was drawing floor plans and elevations and doing watercolors for projects in the School of Architecture, and I remember where everything had fallen. But later on, when you become a parent, there's so many more things occupying your mind. You can't just do that. Remember where things were dropped. And so as an adult, I became very organized. And I wanted to reverse engineer the way I did things so that the kids would learn the process that they could do easily, and then they could remember, right? And so I started thinking, okay, so what makes the most sense? And I also did some research, and the research I did was to learn what people do with the worst cases of hoarding, right? Not just people who clutter a lot, but hoarders. There was a show called Hoarders, right? And so I looked at some of the techniques they used in those processes, and I put together a system that my kids could follow. And after about 6-7 times of doing it with me, where I would recite the process to them, they started learning it by heart, and they were able to do it by themselves. So that now that my kids are older, right? My oldest one is 18 years old. He just started college. And my youngest one is 15 years old. And so now my 18-year-old, he tends to keep his room tidy. He tidies up every day. But my younger one, he kind of likes chaos a little bit like I used to. And so he let it get messier. And so for my younger one, sometimes I have to go in and say, okay, your room is getting messy, it's getting too messy. You need to apply the process that I had taught them in the whole room. For my older one, it's more like he'll let like the top of a dresser get cluttered. And so I'll just tell him, I think you need to apply the process to the top of the dresser. But they both are really good at tidying up their rooms, and they have been doing this for years, right? And so at the beginning of the summer, I started wondering if I could teach this process to other children. I had taught this process to mothers. When I was doing feng shui consultations, I would teach this process to mothers so they could teach it to their children. And it had worked really well. I had even taught somebody who had a 3-year-old, and she taught the process to the 3-year-old, and the 3-year-old started tidying up his bedroom and his playroom with her and loving it. But what I hadn't tried yet is to teach this process to kids and teenagers and see if they would do it by themselves with no help from the parents. So I spent the summer doing a beta testing of the process, and I got in touch with several families that had kids between 8 and 12 and teenagers, and sharing the process with them to see if the kids would do it by themselves. And guess what? It was a complete, total success. Every single young person that did this was able to tidy up the room. So like to take the total chaos, because I look for kids that had especially messy rooms. And I asked them to follow the process, and some of them filmed themselves or took before and after photos. And so everybody was successful. Some of the kids in the test group kept their room tidy from then on, and other kids let it get messy again. But the beautiful thing about the process is that every time that you apply it, it's a little bit easier and it takes less time. And so I'm really excited about it because I'm about to launch a class. The class is going to be taught at the end of October, and I'll get you more details later. But I'm going to teach this class so that parents can take the class and teach it to their children, or so that parents with kids that are preteens or teenagers can just share the class with them so that they can tidy up by themselves. So I'm going to be sharing the link when I'm done with the video, the live video recording. I'm going to share a link so you can watch the videos and so that you can see the before and after photos, which are pretty amazing, and the testimonials of moms. So one thing that has some of the feedback I had gotten, from parents and from children is really interesting. And so I wanted to tell you this story, of how my children pitched this idea of the video games, and how that related to Legos, and how I was so terrified of them getting more Legos that I allowed them to get video games earlier. Because when you and I were growing up, I mean, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 54, and when I was growing up, the worst mess in my bedroom meant I had to pick up a few dozen items. But the amount of stuff kids have today, the numbers of toys, the clothes, everything, you're talking about hundreds and sometimes thousands of items that you have to pick up. So it's become a lot more complex, tidying up a room. And it's not a matter, sometimes, a parent might conclude, oh, my child is just lazy, or my child is just not interested, or they just love chaos. Most kids, they want their room to be organized. The more you nag at them to be organized, they may resist you, and they oppose you, just to be contrary, because they don't like to be told what to do, because they don't want to be forced to do things. And so some of the feedback I got from parents is that because the process came from me, somebody who was not their mom, then they were able to apply the process really efficiently, and they were not didn't have any negative feelings about it because it did not come from the parents. So that's what I wanted to share with you. Being tidy is not something that some people are born with and other people aren't. Being tidy is it's a skill that can be learned, and it's something that every healthy person enjoys and that every healthy person desires. And so when people say, well, I just love my clutter, they're not used to their clutter and they don't love the clutter. They have become numb to their clutter. And so I'm going to be sharing that link with you, and I would want to ask if you want to participate. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you were a tidy kid and teenager or not. I would love to hear that from you. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.